The case, we cannot let this, we've never allowed any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic of 17, all the way around 16. We have never let our democracy take second fiddle. We can both have a democracy and elections and at the same time correct the public health.
So what you just saw there was Joe Biden last night on ABC. And like so many of his live interviews on network television, it was a disaster. It's yet more evidence of his dementia, his cognitive decline, and the general fact that the man is not fit to run for president and especially to effectively serve as president. And that his whole campaign right now is about stopping Bernie Sanders. And the next stage in this is to draft Dr. Jill Biden into the campaign more directly. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. Jill Biden is an accomplished woman, and as a potential first lady, we deserve to hear more from her and about her. But she's being used as a crutch in this campaign more than almost any other first lady I can ever remember. Here's a clip from a Joe Biden live stream yesterday that demonstrates that.
And I want to welcome all of you to a family town hall on COVID-19 with Vice President Biden, Dr. Joe Biden. Now it is my honor to turn it over to Dr. Joe Biden and Vice President Biden, who will get us started.
Thanks, Michelle. And I love your sweater with the flag on it. That looks great. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for joining us. And, we're happy to see all of you.
Am I supposed to say something now?
Yeah, you can say something.
Well, hi, everybody.
And so what you see there is a clip that was compiled from somebody on Twitter that speeds up the dialogue to not waste your time, but which shows that for 2.5 minutes on this stream, Joe Biden does and says nothing, and that it's basically being run by his wife. And again, in and of itself, that might not be controversial, but we know that whenever Joe Biden is fully exposed in the media, one-on-one with a journalist, where there's nothing between him and the viewer, it's just him and his answers, it's a disaster. There's long pauses at times that make no sense. There's long ramblings, like in the opening clip, that make no sense. Joe Biden needs to look at cue cards and his script or his pre-recorded answers on pieces of paper for questions that any presidential candidate should have off the top of his or her head. It's not going well. And if we remember, there was another clip from early on during the self-isolation process where Joe Biden went in front of the camera, gave his speech, gave his monologue, whatever, and just stood there blinking at the screen. His wife had to come out and basically drag him off the side, try to go over and hug him and give him a kiss and try to pull him off. And then she walked off and had to basically yell Joe before he followed like a lost puppy. This is not a first lady. This is not a potential first partner acting in their traditional capacity. This is somebody who they feel, who the Biden campaign feels is essential to take the heat off Joe Biden during these long live streams, because the longer this man is in an unfiltered media environment, the greater the chance of disaster, of gaffes, of mistakes that should be avoidable by a more effective and more fit presidential candidate. This is extremely troubling. There's been a lot of news today about Jill Biden. Is she a real doctor? Should she call herself doctor? For the record, she has a PhD. She's 100% a doctor. The real news was that Whoopi Goldberg confused her as a medical doctor and said she could be Surgeon General. But at the end of the day, Jill Biden is not running for president. And these sorts of clips where Jill Biden is basically Joe Biden's personal support worker more than his wife, at least that's what it looks like, does not inspire confidence. And if you can criticize Jill Biden for anything from my perspective, it's that she's allowing this to happen to her husband, or she's allowing her husband to do this to himself. And we know Joe Biden is not fit for this. And again, I don't make any of the points I make when I point out Joe Biden's weaknesses as a drive to make fun of Joe Biden. I have never made that my main goal or even a partial goal. It's been about pointing out how sad it is, how concerned I am for Joe Biden, because while I don't like the man and while I despise much of what he's done personally and politically, he's still a human being with dignity, and we shouldn't lose sight of that fact. And I think that all of this, the ramblings, the pauses, the freezing in the camera, the fact that he can't do a long interview, it seems, without his wife basically guiding him along, leads me to believe that this is not a man in the position to do the job he's running for. We need to keep having this discussion. None of this is to say that Donald Trump is any better. Donald Trump has exhibited many of these same flaws, in addition to the fact that he's ideologically even worse than Joe Biden. But it is to say that you have a candidate in Bernie Sanders who has better ideals than Trump and Biden and is much sharper, is much more there, is much more driven, is much more passionate, is much more plugged in on all the issues that matter, and he's there in and of himself, ready to fight, ready to run, ready to work. The fact that people are putting Biden up to this just to stop Bernie Sanders, I can't think of anything sadder and more self-serving to the rich and wealthy and well-connected than that.